That is the first thing you have to do. You make use of your tape. Make sure that your tape is very, very correct. Your tape. Looking that we are using inches here in Nigeria. When you go to some other country, they use centimeters. But here in Nigeria, we use inches. Both the carpenters and so many other professionals in Nigeria, they use inches. So here we use inches. So factors to consider before you measure. You must make sure that your tape is correct. Making sure that your tape is correct. If you have a tape that is not correct, you find it difficult to measure correctly, even when you are sewing and when you are taking the person's measurements. So now, again, you have to iron your fabric. There are some fabrics that are rumpled when you buy them, so you make sure you iron them very well, so that you won't have excess after sewing. Because when you are measuring on your table, discover that because the fabrics are rumpled, you'll be able to get your exact measurements. Is that okay? Alright. Again, is that before you start measuring, you must make sure you check the pattern on your dress, the pattern on the fabric. The pattern is very, very important, because when you get some fabrics that are beautiful, they have flowers, they have some prints on it, you have to check so that you'll be able to know how to position them. There are some of them, even when you want to make a style from them, the styles are very simple, but the pattern on the dress will bring out the beauty of the dress. Have you seen some of those dresses? They are simple dresses, but when you look at the pattern that was placed on the dress, it will look very, very beautiful. So you check the pattern, check the silvage. Like when you're making a lace material, discover that the edges are well cleaned, and you can decide to use the edges for beautification or whatever. Is that okay? Alright. So you make sure you check all of those patterns. Check the border. There are some clothes that the down parts and the upper parts are not the same border. So you check them so that you'll be able to know whether you will use either this or this. Some of them are the same, some are different. So depending on the one you want to use and the position you, sometimes we advise students to make use of the darker one down and make use of the lighter one up. Is that okay? So it's part of the factors to consider before you measure. Again, is that you check whether the cloth is running. There are some dresses that runs, like jean material. It's not all of them. We have to check it out so that you will not combine a brighter material with that material and you discover that the other one has run into the brighter one. So you check it. There are different ways to check it. You can get a hanky, wet it, check on the fabric. But actually, it's not all sellers that allows you to check all of those things, but they are very, very important so that you know the kind of material to combine it with. If you are not sure whether it's running, please check. There are some of them, even when you are sewing it, you start noticing that it's running into the other. Maybe if there is white in that material, discover that the black material is running into the white. So if you don't consider all of these things, after making a dress, you discover that you have made mess of the dress. So these are the part of the things you consider before you do what? Before you measure. So all of these things, even before you cut. So you check it, check whether your material is running so that you're able to cut well. So remember, you are combining the two. Factors to consider before you measure and factors to consider before you cut. So all of these things are what you check. So there's also what we call the silvage. The silvage. I wish I had a material here. I'll be able to show you. Let me have that material there. Yes, that material. Throw it to me. Alright. We have this material. There's what we call silvage. The edge of the dress. We call the silvage. We have the crosswise and the lengthwise silvage. The crosswise and the lengthwise gray line. When you look at this, you see that this lot is running out. We call these gray lines. When you start pulling them, all of them will start going out. We have the one that is standing and the one that is like this. So whichever way you position the determine how it runs. So you check it. Assuming this is a material that has a pattern, just as we said initially. If the pattern, maybe there's a print a print that has a human being on it, you'll be able to check, is this human being, is he standing up? You must make sure that the human being's head is on your body, is on the upper part. If it's like this, that means you're turning the person upside down. It's not correct. As a fashion designer. So you must make sure that the positioning are very, very correct. So now is the silk edge. This is the edge of the dress. Some of them, they are written something, they are printed, the name of the fabric is written on it. So you'll be able to check. And when you are sewing, make sure that this name, this printed name, is not out in your dress. Don't allow it to show in your dress. Make sure you remove it. Don't allow it to show when you are sewing. There are some dresses you see after making them, you start seeing the prints, the name of the material, the name of the fabric on them. Is not correct. It doesn't show that you're a professional seller or fashion designer. So you must make sure that those prints are removed. Don't add them to your fabric. Try to omit them. Try to take them off from your fabric. Is that okay? So now, remember I was talking about material that runs. For example, this material now has red, white, black, blue. There are some material that you may see, you may not even know that they are running until you start sewing them. When you start sewing them, you discover that the red is running into the white. And sometimes after making the cloth looks old. And the client will be like, I gave you this cloth to make for me. It was new. So how is it looking that old? That means something must have happened in the process of sewing. And again, you check your needle. There are some fabrics that select needle. Like when you are making chiffon, for example, there are some material that are very light. You'll be able to know the size of the needle that you are making use of. There's needle size 14, size 16, 18, 20. I'm making a strong G, you can use size 20, size 18. But when you are making those light clothes like chiffon, size 14, 16, we go for it. Because if you use a bigger needle, it will affect the fabric. There will be some punches here and there, and it will not come out well. Even sometimes when you are sewing them, they will be dragging each other. The needle will be dragging the thread. You'll be dragging the fabric. So you have to check all of these things before you start sewing. And again, check the thread that you are using. The thread must match with the fabric, the color, the lining, the zip, every material that you're going to use to make a particular dress. You must check the background of the dress. Like this material now, I can use black on it. I can use black thread on it. I can use black lining. I can use black zip. You don't have to make a white dress and you can use a red zip on it. It doesn't look professional. So you must make sure that that everything that you are using to make that dress is to match. It must be the same so that the clothes will look beautiful. Is that okay? Again, we have taught you how to make your hemline. We've taught you different ways of making hemlines. We've taught you handkerchief finishing. We taught you how to make self-band. We taught you how to tack. You use your hand needle to do some tacking on it. So all of these things are the things that you are going to be seeing as we proceed in our teachings. So if there is any question, you can ask. Is there any question? I want question from all the things that I've said. All right, ask your question. Are you confused? Question. So all of you got what I explained. All right. Again, we talk about knowing your tape. Knowing your tape. You must make sure you know your tape very, very well. Because if you don't know your tape, you make mistake when measuring somebody. And again, we say factors to consider before you measure. Remember, you said that the person you are measuring must be at ease. The person will not be sitting down and you are measuring the person. The person must stand well so that you can be able to get the person's body shape. Because if you don't measure the person very well, after sewing, the clothes may either be undersized or oversized. Is that okay? Again, because we are here making female dress, for female, you must make sure that the person is wearing a very good dress, a very good bra, so that you can be able to measure the person very well. you wear a dress as light as possible. Let your dress be as light as possible, so that you can be able to know the person's body shape. You know, in this field, we work with our eyes, we work with our minds, we work with every part of your body. Your legs are working, your hands are working, your eyes are working, your senses, every part of you is working. So all of these things, you'll be checking them. You check whether the person's shape. You know, there are some shapes that when you see it, you'll be able to know what to make. There are some, when you're measuring your bust area, discover that they have a bigger back, that their back is more bigger than their front. Some, their front is more bigger than their back. So that when you are shaping the dress, you'll be able to know how to shape well. Because if you don't see the person's shape very well, you may not be able to know, especially for those that are beginners. So beginner, we always advise you to measure your clients, see your clients. Except you have grown to the point of being professional. That is only when you can assume, and sometimes your assumption can give you the correct measurements. But we don't assume as beginners. We make sure we measure the person very, very well. Measure the person's body shape. You measure the roundness of your sleeve. Measure your bust area, your waist, a natural waistline. Because every woman has a place where her body shape fits. And that is our natural waistline, the smallest part of our waist. So that when you measure, come, let me measure her. Okay, you, come. Be fast. Now I want to measure her waist. When you look at her, you discover that this place is smaller and she has a shape, her hip is bigger. So now if I want to measure her smallest part of her waist, which is her natural waistline, I will take my tape round her waist. I will locate it. There are some that are big in size. You may not be able to see it with your eyes. But when you touch the person a little bit, you feel it. Everybody has it. There's a place that contours, and that is a woman's body it is. So you'll be able to note the place so that you can be able to shape well and it will fit the person. Now watch me. Face the class. So now this is her natural waistline. This is a natural waistline, the smallest part of her waist. So if I want to make a gown for her, I will make sure I locate this place, so that when I'm measuring her waist at the point of shaping, I'll be able to get her feet very well. Are you seeing it? Now I want to measure her bust area. Please let the person be at ease, and you yourself that is measuring should also be at ease. You don't have to struggle to measure the person. So you take it round. Make sure you don't slack your tape. Make sure you don't slack your tape. You take it. Watch the back. It's not slacked. You'll be able to get her bust area. Remember, children, you use chest because they don't have breasts. So you use chest for them. For men, you use chest. Chikamsu. For men, you use chest. For female, you use bust area. So now we have the waist. And even the hip area. There's a place that a woman's shape is bigger, is fuller. So you check the fullest part of her hips. That is where you're going to take your hip circumference. So now I'm taking the fullest part of her hip. I will take it round. Because she's going to wear her skirt from the down part to the up, I have to go down a little so that she can be able to drag her clothes up. Now I'm taking it down and I'm taking it up. While you are doing that, we are adjusting your tape to be able to get her actual hip measurements, where her hip is fuller. So these are the things we are going to measure. And then her roundness or sleeve. You can also take the fullest part of her arm. If she said, like now, this cloth is her long sleeve. Now the first place I'm going to measure her roundness is where? The fullest part of her arm. This is where her arm is fuller. I will measure the roundness of it. I will come here, I will measure, and then the smallest part. So that when I'm shaping her sleeve, I'll be able to shape accurately. Is that okay? Then her shoulder. Everybody has shoulder bone. You have a shoulder bone where your hand is socketed to your shoulder. So now from this shoulder bone, there's a shoulder bone here. Everybody has it. So from this shoulder bone to this shoulder bone, I will take my shoulder measurements. Then half of it, when you check her spine, is half of her shoulder. From this other shoulder to this other shoulder is where her shoulder, half of her shoulder measurement is. Then from here to east, you get her full measurements. Is that okay? So any question? Any other question from these measurements? There's another question. Again, hip location. Come. I want to also show you hip location because very soon some of us are making skirts. Hip location. You have to locate where her hip is fuller. How is a particular place you put your hip circumference? If you don't locate it, you may miss it, and where she is wearing her clothes, the thing will hang somewhere. So now you have a shoulder, a hip bone. You ask the person, where does she wear her skirt? From that place to the fullest parts, you'll be able to locate. Remember, I said we are working with our eyes too. So you use your eyes to do most of the measurements, most of the seeing. Is that okay? All right. Any question? You understood it well. Very soon we enter into our practicals, and then we'll know how to cut all of these things that we have mentioned, and you start buying fabrics. And as you're buying fabrics, you are seeing how these fabrics are being used and how they are being measured. Thank you.